So I confess to knowing absolutely nothing about smart cities. So that's my confession. So the first question to anyone is, can you just describe to us what a smart city is? So Matteo, you're closest to me, and I've got a beer, so you're first.
Okay, so okay, so the first point I'd like to make is that, in my opinion, actually, in the opinion of the people who build smart cities, that the first priority for a smart city is to improve the citizens' life. So to do that, they try to create new services that will help the people of the city in order to better manage their time, their resources, etc. So at the moment, the main problem that I see in a smart city, beside the security point of view, is that all different sectors inside the smart city works mostly on their own. So, for example, to make an example, Mark, you are from UK, unfortunately, so you don't know
unfortunately,
about wine.
My God, this is an Italian making a joke about a Brit. This is not going to work well, Matteo.
So, but even if you are from UK, I read in your biography that you spent some time in France.
Yep.
So you may have learned something about wines.
I learned a lot about wines when I lived in France, let me tell you.
So, like in winemaking, when you have to make a wine, there are different actors in the process, like in a smart city, but all these actors, usually when you're speaking from a single vineyard or a single canteen, they all try to create the same product. So they all agree on some specific things on their product, and they are all trying to follow this guideline. Okay, so that's what I think is going to happen for a smart city. And another thing that I'd like to highlight, that in my opinion is going to happen very soon, is that we are going to have intercommunication between three main actors. The first one is the physical layer, so the sensor and all the stuff that are placed inside the city. So we can control traffic, we can control weather, we can control energy consumption, and all this kind of stuff. And the second layer is the logic layer. That is something that usually, in my opinion, is built by some vendor and implemented by the city itself. So there should be one actor that controls the different systems, or at least try to make those systems communicate with each other properly. And then we have the third actor that in my previous research I never considered, but now I'm seeing that is more important, and is what I call the cloud layer, or the service layer. That is the integration of known service that the users already are using, like, for example, Google services or Apple services. And we can see that is happening already, maybe in a smaller size, like, for example, IoT. So Apple has, for example, HomeKit, or whatever is the name, that can allow you to interface with sensor and system inside your home to control them. And for example, another example I'd like to point is, I don't know how many of you know about the, what's the name? I wrote them down because I'm very bad with names, is Google Flu Trends. So basically Google made an experiment that is starting reading the research of the users, try to understand when there is a flu epidemic. When the flu epidemic starts, like every year there is a flu epidemic, and they did this experiment in the UK, and they were able to understand that there is a flu epidemic 5 days before the national sanitary system in the UK. So I'm thinking that government and cities will try to use the power and the knowledge of third-party services or third-party corporation in order to implement this third communication layer within the sensor and their actual actuators and stuff inside the city.
Okay, so let me halt, because again, I know nothing about smart cities, so I'm trying to understand that might be useful. So if I understand what you're saying, it's a combination of sensors that can tell about where people go within the cities.
Yeah,
it's
where people go, where people want to go.
Okay, connected services and connected data between all those things.
Yeah.
And that is both public data and private data. So is it a partnership between both public companies and private, or the public sector and the private sector?
And that's what, in my opinion, is going to be when we reach a mature status for smart cities.
Okay, and then what? Before we go to Eddie, because I want to ask the question of like, what do you think is the biggest problem in that? What's the model smart city in the world right now? Like, if someone says like that is the best, that's the most advanced smart city
at the moment.
Yeah.
At the moment,
because I can tell you it's not San Francisco where I live. It's like the most backward place.
At the moment, I see the most advanced in probably Dubai and Singapore as well. In Europe, I don't know much, but Barcelona, okay. Italy, no.
Yeah, San Francisco, definitely not.
Okay.
Right. Okay, great.
One comment. There is a lot of marketing behind the smart city concept, because many cities are saying, okay, we are the smartest city in the world, but when you go there, they're just using some interesting technology, but it's not like they already have everything backed up by new technology and system. So we are like an early stage right now.
So what makes Dubai and Barcelona so advanced then? What's the technology
because
that
they are
using?
taking the lead, thinking about the new technology, how to properly implement it, making some investment, already have some solutions, but it's not like everything is automated, everything is new.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that you have to think of a smart city as an ecosystem where think of it as like a body, where if you were to design a body and say, now I want to connect all these pieces so there's a living, breathing organism, that's what you're essentially building with a smart city. So, imagine where, again, I know this is simplistic, but the roads are arteries and so on, and now you want to create a better flow. Today the roads are terrible in a lot of cities. Traffic, clogs up in Dubai. I live in Abu Dhabi. In Dubai, there's a lot of traffic at different times of day. With self-driving vehicles and with the sensor grid and so on, the idea would be that it's a self-healing environment over time. I mean, this is going to take time, but it's the orchestration of the sensors and the signaling and then the vehicles that ultimately lead to better outcome. And there's a lot of modeling done around it and so on. And then it's obviously orchestration of greater systems that, then interrelate to one another. So, where the power system and the, law enforcement system, for example, and healthcare systems and so on all have interrelationships. And as you can imagine, as you start creating more and more of those ecosystem-based relationships, the idea of a total system failure can be really problematic. As any of you have seen Die Hard 4 or any of these kinds of movies, these kinds of problems exist, particularly where the underpinnings are hardware and software, IoT-based environments that have 1990 vulnerabilities and so on.
So I was going to say, so I'm assuming this is like the city of the future, I'm imagining in my head, right? The Jetsons, like riding on the thing. I imagine this is built on the latest and greatest, right? Correct assumption?
Well, it may very well be the technology that came out yesterday, but as many of you know that do research, it's the technology that came out yesterday that has the 1990s era web server built into it with the same vulnerabilities that we patched 20 years ago that are unpatched or unupdatable hardware, unupdatable software, lots of these types of problems. And so part of the things that many of us are working on is, how do we create systems of systems? How do we create ultimate owners, similar to the way Tesla has taken ownership of the systems in the vehicle? And so there's lots to discuss in this area.
Okay. So if you had to, so you're sitting with a newbie like me, what is the single most important thing about security in a smart city today?
Well, I think one of the main problems is that the attack surface is growing every day. And why is that? Because governments are purchasing new technology and deploying it without any security testing. They are blindly trusting the vendors. So if a vendor says we implement encryption, we have authentication, blah, 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 government basically blindly trust them, acquire technology, deploy it, start to using it. There is no security testing on any stage. They do a lot of testing for functionality. They compare providers, vendor solutions to see what fit better, but there is no security testing. What I hear is that sometimes they use a questionnaire where they ask the vendors if they have enough security. The vendor will have to tick yes or no, but it doesn't matter what the vendor says because no one will test that before that, after that. Then I heard that some cities have partnership with universities to audit the system, the devices, but that doesn't scale. And also the work is being done by students or PhD candidate, whatever, and they don't have any real life experience hacking sometimes. And it doesn't scale well because we have a lot of new technology coming out every week, and it's difficult to keep up with everything. So I think that's the main problem, how to find a way every time a government is going to acquire new technology to make sure that the technology is secure and ready to be deployed and won't be hacked next day.
Okay, Matteo, same question.
One of the problems that, in my experience, is very important, at least in Italy, is that since the government is not replacing existing technology, and since existing technology maybe be like 40 years old or 50 years old, for example, we used as an example the train station or the railway or the street traffic. So they buy new technology, and one of the requirements for these new technologies is that the technology must be retrocompatible with the existing sensor, the existing system in place. So that means that you have to be in some way vulnerable to problems that we may have solved, like Eddie said, like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because they have to take in account sensor that is still vulnerable to the same problems. But until now, those sensors, those actuators, those systems were offline, were not connected to the cloud system of the city, were not interconnecting to other ecosystem of the city. For example, the traffic sensor was on its own. Now the traffic sensor are connected to the police station, or the traffic sensor are connecting to the medical station, so the ambulance can find a better way to go to the hospital. So since now all the sensors must be connecting one another, they also have problems that are available to exploit from other systems. So maybe an attacker can hack the medical system and therefore access to the traffic system, and therefore access to the police system, and so on and so on and so on. And as Cesar said, these things is growing up every day. So it's very difficult now to understand if I hack from one of the systems where I can reach, where there is something that can stop me. So that's another problem that we face in the past.
Yeah, so you raise a really good point. I mean, there's a number of dimensions to this. Let's just take, for example, just understanding the potential resilience of a smart city. You've got to, first of all, look at the entities that are involved in this. If you look at any city, right, their intent is good, right? I mean, they want to lower carbon emissions, lower the costs, lower the tax burden. These are all good initiatives, right? But there's a lot of entities that have never really worked together in terms of orchestrating the different interdependencies. So you have to profile the entities, you have to profile where they are from a technology perspective, you have to profile the services that each entity is bringing to the table, and where those services are from a contributory perspective. What data are they contributing, what networking they're contributing, and so on. Then you have to model that. And just in that work, there's a lot of complexity that many of us in cyber really have never dealt with, just in terms of understanding that. And then if you think about it in terms of impact, let's just take the power grid as an example. So suppose the power grid had a reduced capacity because of some cyber event. So, suppose half of the power generating capacity went out. Now you think of all these interdependencies where you have the ability normally to supply power to a hospital, to the financial services organizations, to those that do, cleaning water for, a place like the UAE and so on. How do you apportion power in that situation? Well, you might say, oh, well, we'll give it to the hospital first. Well, the hospital might have a generator that would run for 2 weeks, so you don't have to give it to them. And so there's a lot of thinking that has to go into this. It's not a one-to-one relationship. It's a many-to-many relationship. And each entity and each service has a many-to-many interdependency that's complex. And then when you start adding threat modeling to that and attack scenarios where you don't really have 100-year data, you have to do a lot of math that is, that has randomness in it, Monte Carlo simulations, stochastic approaches. So there's a lot that we as security people have never really looked at. And that's just on the side of just trying to figure out what this could look at. And we haven't even talked about some of the stuff that is done on, you know, what you do, for example, says on the side of testing for vulnerabilities and all of this, you know.
So you kind of made me think about privacy, right? So I'd imagine there's huge privacy implications to this. So I'm thinking about the horrible attacks that happened in Barcelona last week. I was in Barcelona, walking down that street 3 weeks ago. And it took several days to figure out where that van had gone after the event. Now, if that had been in London, there are cameras absolutely everywhere. And within 30 minutes, they would have figured out exactly where that van went. There's clear privacy implications between those two things and who has access to that data in the right way. But if I'm understanding correctly, in a smart city, you know exactly where someone's gone. You know exactly where they are. There's a whole set of privacy things. How do people think about that in the context of a smart city?
Yeah, I think it's always like a cost-benefit equation. Like people have to give some privacy away to be more secure, right? Because you have cameras on the street that help for traffic, help to prevent crime. But okay, people will know that you will be walking at some street at some time. I can accept that. So I think it would take some time to people to understand and also not be extremist about privacy, because there is some movement around, okay, I need 100% privacy, but that's not even possible to do. So people need to understand that they have to give away a little bit privacy to have a better life, to be more secure in general. And that's our discussion that had to be, that should take place sometimes, and have to be some regulation and some law related with that, because also there is the possibility to abuse by the ones that are in charge of the technology, because you could have an operator that have access to the system, can see the cameras, can read the sensors, can see a lot of information. That information should be protected, but it should be only used for the intended use, not for something else. And I think right now there is little control about what governments or cities are allowed to do or not with that information, right?
Right. But if an individual participates in a smart city, the choice of whether they use or whether they give up their privacy, if they get to choose that, the whole concept fails, right? Doesn't it? So like it's a non-issue, isn't it, in that sense? Like once that data is there, like if I'm tracked on the metro and someone knows where I am, someone knows who sold me the card, at that point, like you can't have a optional opt-in to that thing, right? Whereas you can kind of online, right? You can decide to opt into tracking and all of these things, but that system kind of fails, doesn't it?
Well, I think that's one of the main issue, and why that means that security must take in account, because I don't opt in for this privacy regulation. I mean, I live in the city, I automatically opt in. So that means that in exchange, I want to be sure that the information that I'm giving away are somehow protected. And I think like we mostly speak to InfoSec people, so they are by default, by definition, susceptible to privacy issue. But when you speak to normal people, sorry for you. But anyway, when you speak with the people outside the InfoSec community, we give away our privacy every day. I mean, I use Gmail for emailing, and it automatically adds me like my travel information in a proper manner, so it's very easy for me to get this information. That means that Gmail is reading my mail, parsing it, and adding in some database with my travel information. The same happens with appointment or the automatic reply function of Gmail. So you made the example of the security for Barcelona, right? But there are much more common example in terms of usability and making the life of the people easier or easier.
Well,
I think it's just one comment on this. I mean, I think that, you know, if privacy, any thinking about privacy today is just an illusion and a lack of understanding of technology. I mean, we in security, because of our knowledge, have the ability to create a certain measure of privacy because of what we understand how to do. But in general, it's an illusory thing to think that we even have any as general people living in the world, just based on what's out there. I mean, there's all of this fictitious viewpoint of, it's sort of created for us by opt-in or out. But I mean, to your point, there's this. If you want to read a book that is still relevant today, it was written in the 1990s. It's a book called The Transparent Society. I don't know if any of you have ever read it. It's by a guy named David Brin. You can actually download it on PDF off of one of the Harvard websites, I think. And he wrote this idea that, there's this trade-off between, would you like to live in a world where there's 100% surveillance, but there's, everything is a perfect electronic society and you have all of the benefits of zero crime and everything, but you're basically exposed and you're naked, from a surveillance perspective? Or would you like a complete opt-in type of world where you choose every point at which your privacy is given away, but then you don't have all of the benefits of modern technology? And of course, there is no binary decision in this, as you all know, but it's an interesting read, and it was written in the 90s, and it's as applicable today as it was in the 90s.
I mean, my observation is I think the people that are growing up today have no expectation of privacy, and it's fundamentally different. So I used to work at Microsoft, and we used to have a set of MIT grads that would come in every year, and I was what's called a product unit manager. So I kind of ran a business function, and these folks would come in, and these MIT grads, and you get to ask them questions. And a lot of the older people would ask them questions around like, what can we do? And the kind of stunning response from all of these people was, you should use all of our code to do as much and make my life as best as possible. And all of these people were like shuffling, like feeling really uncomfortable. We can't do that. We can't do that. And they were telling you, I want to use your information. And I think there's this fundamental like difference between the notion of like growing up and having an expectation of privacy and accepting all of these services that aren't. But it feels like if you want to participate in this smart city stuff, you have to give that up, and it's not an option, an opt-in. So interesting. Or yeah, I should call out, there's a guy down here in the audience who works for me who has an interesting thing about privacy. He's going to get really embarrassed now, but it's quite funny. So he is the most privacy-aware person that I've ever met. Here he is. He's sticking his hand up. So when we first started working together, we went on a business trip, and he goes through the scanning, and he won't get scanned. I'm like, dude, like, come on, what the fuck is going on? And we start talking about this, and it turns out his house is completely wired, but every night he pulls the USB connectors out, he pulls everything out of the house. And then one day I go into work, and I find out he's got Alexa. I'm like, come on, like, what is going on? And it's like, but it's this trade-off between like functionality and once you get that stuff, everything else gets thrown out the window, right? And
yeah, but the Alexa wasn't connected to the internet. So every time he said, Alexa, what time is it? Alexa said, I don't know.
Yeah, no, his was because I asked the question, right? But yeah. All right, so fundamental like technology pieces that are involved in this. So it sounds like driverless cars, like autonomous vehicles is a big thing, right? And I would imagine autonomous logistics in general, right? Like all the stuff that we're hearing about that's happening, whether it's Hyperloop stuff and like, city-to-city transportation or things. Who are the players that are in this space? I'm imagining like Uber, Tesla, like all of these are the big
Schneider Electric, for example.
Schneider Electric?
Schneider Electric.
Okay.
For example, they make traffic lights and control systems, signaling devices. So, their goal is to tie all the signals together and make systems of systems out of that and link them to systems that turn off all of the street lights. When no cars are going through, all the street lights go out for a while, saving power for, or talk to vehicles and traffic patterns and redirect traffic, things like that.
Okay, so any geopolitical kind of concerns around this?
I don't know, you tell me.
Well, that's an interesting question because related with what I said before, because if you're a government, you are acquiring technology, you don't really know what's inside the hardware, for instance. You don't know what the embedded software is doing. You don't know if that we will capture the data and send it to some place in Russia, China, or the US. So that's a very interesting point when you think about geopolitics and saying, okay, this technology I'm using, which is from a country which is maybe not very friendly or is well known for spying or whatever, then you need, as a government protecting your citizenship and the country, you need to know what software are you running in your cities. And that's something that no one knows right now. It's like practically buy black boxes, you connect them, and you use it.
And then that's one of the problems that I spoke before, that there is no actor that controls all the different elements in our smart city. Like Eddie made the example of the body. So at the moment, our smart city have no brain and has a lot of little brains, one for each element, but there is no a central brain that can control everything and can put in, for putting in a computer engineering perspective, we should have like a proxy or something that know how this system works and how they communicate to each other, and can put them in communication. At the moment, we have like a dozen of vendors, a dozen of OEM that try to sell their product. Smart City buy the products, deploy them, and forgot about them. So, and then next year they buy the new product again, and that's over. So
Yeah, and I think to the point that Cesar was making, and Matteo as well, you know, the models that exist today for testing and validation in general, you know, for example, common criteria, other models like that, really are not helping us, because, you know, they're based on the idea that somehow, you know, for example, for smart cities, there's going to be a protection profile that is somehow applicable to, you know, the kind of vulnerabilities that we're going to find in some box that, you know, we've never seen before, that's out there, and that, you know, we're magically 2 years from now going to have a report that says this is okay. You know, so it really does require our community, you know, security researchers, you know, like those of us up here, like yourselves, to take these things, cut them down to bare metal, you know, pull the chips out of them, you know, look at the code and really say, how do we find the vulnerabilities in these things that really haven't been seen? So, you know, intentional, unintentional, backdoors, bugs, bad implementation of crypto. I mean, you know, to your point earlier, you know, somebody does an RFP, they say, you know, do you have AES encryption in the box? Yes. You know, the real question is it done at all in any semblance of correct implementation? You know, do you have authentication? Yes. Well, you know, is it a 4-character password? Yes. Okay. Well, you know, so I mean, there's a lot of things that really, through, you know, more aggressive testing and validation that can be brought out. And obviously that's not a perfect process either, but it's a lot better than sort of these things that we've seen that are generally accepted in our industry, unfortunately.
yeah, and speaking about that, well, last year we spoke about, I spoke about in GSEC about the transportation system hacking that we did in the past. So one of the things that we want to brought in the talk was our methodology to assess those systems for the exact same reason. But during the last year, what we found is that this methodology is very good if you want to test a single system. But the point in a smart city is that you are not assessing a single system usually. So we also need a methodology to understand not only the threat on that system, but the threat on the other systems. So even if I take apart this smart traffic sensor that can turn off or on the traffic light on the base of the vehicle that's passing under it, I still don't understand how the rest of the system works, because the rest of the system, first of all, may be located somewhere else. The backend can be in Germany, can be in Russia, can be in wherever the data center is cheaper. And secondly, I'm assessing one of the systems that is connecting to 3 or 4 other systems, and I know nothing about them. So even if I hack this, there may be repercussion on the other system as well. So I think that as technical guy, I'm not a high-level guy. I won't take decision about the government stuff and all this. I am more a technical guy. So as a technical guy, what we need to do is try to understand what is the best methodology to try to assess the system efficiently. Because we cannot spend like 1 month for each device and expect that the industry will follow our time. They will publish new devices, they will ship new sensors, they will ship new products without the security in the industry in mind. So we need a more efficient way to do that, and we need to have a proper communication with the decision maker.
All right.
The government guys at the end.
So We'll go to so has anyone in the audience got a question? There's not many people drinking beer, which is my question, is like, why is that the case? But anyway, has anyone got any questions? Because if not, I'm going to ask Eddie one. No one's got any questions at this point. Okay, so Eddie, imagine you are now evil Eddie, all right? That's a hashtag right there. If someone wants to put that on Twitter, Eddie has just become evil Eddie. What is the worst thing that you would do to a city? So evil Eddie suddenly says, "Great, I'm gonna do something bad to Singapore." What does it look like? What would you do, and what would the outcome be?
Well, I think the issue really is about the interdependence. Even though we've called out certain cities as leading relative to the smart environment, I don't think that they're so leading that there's this catastrophic interdependence yet that could be in the future. But having said that, I think Matteo brings up both a good and a bad sort of specter. And the specter is that ultimately in some areas you do need a system of systems to manage certain aspects of a smart environment. And just like a lot of these command and control environments, the concentration of that level of control is a very attractive environment for someone to go after, because obviously that level of control, if it's not done properly, could give you the keys to the kingdom. So if I were to look at something like that, I would look at, as you said, the little brains that control these different environments, or if there was a big brain, and I had a lot of time on my hands, to basically own it and to just keep that ownership and keep it quietly until I was ready to use it. I mean, that would be, an interesting objective.
All right, so in practical terms, what would you do? Go after transportation first, go after utilities, go after healthcare,
Well, it depends on your objective. I mean, adversaries have different objectives, I mean, whether you want to create mass panic and riots and, just chaos and pandemonium, or whether you want to, for example, create, financial turmoil in some way. So it really depends, because cyber terrorists and hacktivists and criminals and others are going to have different objectives. So I think it really just depends on who's pulling the strings,
All right. Cesar, I can't think of a CC at the moment, but I'll think of one in a minute. Malware Matteo we could have, but I can't think of a C. But anyway, all right. What would you do?
Well, I can think of a city as making an analogy with a human body, because you have, the sight, you have the ears for listening, you have blood, you have the nervous system. So we try to hack those places. Like for instance, for the vision, you can attack cameras, city cameras, you can attack sensors. Then from the bloodstream, from the nervous system, you can attack the traffic control system, the street lighting system. Of course, you can go for the power grid and you can hit a lot of more different things, but usually that's something more protected and more with more safeguards. But thinking about in that way, you can just try to have different impact on the city depending on the attack. I mean, like he said, if you can cause riot, panic, maybe you will just shoot down electricity on all the breweries of the city, so there will be a lot of riot, probably, people without beer and drink. Then
well, in San Francisco, every couple of years, we get so much air conditioning gets turned on, the power grids go out sweeping anyway, and there's no riots. But yeah, I understand.
The thing with smart city technology is that as an attacker, if you have a lot of different possibilities, and like he said, there is a lot of different interaction, a lot of dependencies on the system, so you can create a chain reaction by maybe hacking a small city. It ends up being a big impact because all the interrelation between the systems. So even for an attacker, it's interesting to see how the systems are interrelated and what will happen if you have one system, how that will influence another one. So it's like he said, it's very complex and different scenarios that we have, that we see usually on corporations or regular organizations, right?
Okay, great. So Matteo, healthcare. So I'd imagine hospitals and pandemics. We've seen bird flu in the US sort of spread across the world, and we saw people track it. what is, if that happened, how would we, in a smart city world, what are the security implications of something like that? If a pandemic kicks in, how could either a smart city be great, or how could it be abused by someone who wants to see something like chemical warfare or pathogens spread in a particular way? Like, what would they do? Is there a particular, are we now storing more data? Like Microsoft have Health Vault, right? Which is basically sort of potentially storing all sorts of interesting information about people. In Beijing, we have the Beijing Genomics Institute, which has 90% of the world's DNA, right? These are very significant data stores of human healthcare stuff. But how's that related to smart cities?
Yeah, at the moment, I don't know.
Okay.
But in the future, probably this data will be available to hospitals or, for example, to the services that I spoke before, like Google or whatever. So they imagine a Google that can tell you, okay, you are searching for these symptoms, you probably have this disease or something like that. This is something that we couldn't do in the past because we didn't have the computational power, but now we do. Now we're also starting to getting more and more data, as you made an example. And I think, like in other system, all of this stuff will be automated in the future. So I'm going back to the question of you before. So what system I would attack in the case of I want to be the evil actor on a smart city hack? So since I had time to think about the question, my answer is media, probably. Because, I don't know, some years ago, I think, I don't remember the exact year, someone hacked some online journal and spread a false notice about some political issue. In less than 15 minutes, the stock markets dropped by like 50%, because all the systems that are actually taking care of this are algorithms. Algorithms read the journal information and acts accordingly. So that means that probably acting on the media or the data sources that spread most of the information. So also social networks and stuff like this. If I can spread the kind of information that I want on this media, I can probably trigger the most of the system in the smart city of the future. So most of the system will take care of this. Also, let's see the example of before let's take another example. Let's take Google. Google Maps use information from Android phones and people using Google Maps to track traffic, right? So if I can fake this kind of data sources, I can affect all people use Google Maps, like from normal people to drivers to Uber drivers, anyone. And probably also like we did some research in the past against the smart garbage system. So that basically they are sensor that detects if a garbage bin is full, and they automatically calls the truck to take. And all of these use Google Maps APIs. And that's another example of what I said before, so that our smart city will integrate third-party systems. So yeah, probably source of information for the whole ecosystem.
Okay, good. So we must now surely the audience has thought of a great question. If not, Alex is going to have a great question because he's been put on the spot. Come on, someone must have a great question.
Well, I don't really have a question.
Yeah, just throw the microphone in his face, and he has no choice, right? Well done, Amy.
Sing instead.
Yeah.
No, so when I think of smart cities, I think about it's more of a big organic distributed system, and I question if it's even possible to secure it because of the nature of the organic distributed systems, where multiple devices just join the network or dejoin the network, and it's almost impossible to control all of these, right? So instead of controlling trying to control the actual devices, like, is it better to have active system that can monitor and police and take action? So active controls, for example. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's kind of how I think about it.
So to restate the question, there's two models. One is you can figure out how to try and secure it internally, or the other one is you can trust but verify, or monitor but verify. Is that correct?
Isn't that the same thing? I don't know. I mean, look, we pretty much fail at everything, from a security perspective. So, I mean, I think there has to be a measure of both, right? I think you have to set up some objectives from a security perspective and then monitor the shit out of it. You know, so yes, both is the answer.
I have no question, but a fear.
A German person, privacy.
Yes.
Come on, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, let's look to Turkey and smart nation and
Turkey.
yeah, let's say Turkey and
All right.
Mr.
This is going to get
Erdogan.
political very quickly.
Yeah.
So if you don't follow the world stage, Erdogan recently accused Angela Merkel of being evil.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
But
oh,
however,
all right, come on, let's get the question.
however, my fear is when a nation goes rogue, then
Hey, I live in America. I have to deal
Yeah.
with Donald Trump. Your
Yeah.
problems are nothing compared to mine. Trust me.
And you are from UK, and you did
I'm
the
from
Brexit.
the UK. I know, and I live where we have a clown for a president. What can I say? Anyway,
Yeah.
oh, I guess it's being
But-
live streamed. I'm sorry.
the problem is when the clown goes on a witch hunt.
Well, yes. Anyway, yes. Okay, so what's the question?
Yeah. What do you say to someone like me that's in fear of the nation goes rogue and doing a witch hunt, and in a smart city or a smart nation, you are an easy target because they know so much about you.
Who wants to take that? I have no idea how I would possibly answer that personally.
Can you repeat the
So
question?
the question is,
So the question, yeah. I'll try and summarize it and say. So Germans obviously are very privacy aware and very privacy conscious. And how would you talk to a German citizen when you have potential rogue nations such as Turkey, for instance, and now got a beef against the Germany, and there's now potential a lot of data and a lot of things that could be attacked against the German people.
so my first answer is a question. I mean, what do you mean with going raw? I mean,
Rogue.
Yeah, sorry. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, half of the citizens are under terror investigation, and most of the press is getting.
Well, to be fair and impartial, I don't think half of the Turkish population are under terror investigations, but just.
So no, well, I think that, I don't live in Turkey, so I don't know about the Turkey situation, but from a perspective of an Italian guy that has knows this big issue, I say that at the moment, most of the modern country are not looking to harm citizens. I mean, they probably want to control them, but the final aim of a liberal country is to provide welfare to the people. So actually, I don't know how to answer your question, because I don't see a scenario in the modern countries in which the government should use this information to go against the normal people, against the people that go to office every day, and beside controlling them, to provide them more welfare. I mean,
So I think the
it
scenario.
sounds like-
So I think the scenario was it's not necessarily the German government are going to use that data against them, but it may be Pyongyang are going to suddenly decide that that there's a huge population of a huge bank of information. That's very naughty.
So the question is not how did the government turn on
But
its
it's
own citizens.
right. But once you have a data bank of information, can foreign governments then use that in a geopolitical situation? I think that's.
I think we're a bit off track, but just to be clear, I mean, if any of you are on the internet and you see advertising, Google, Facebook, etc., have a lot more information than anyone else has. I mean, the governments wish they had the information that the walled gardens have. So
And that's why the government gonna use those providers for information.
they wanted to, but I'm just saying, I mean, so that's really where the data is. I sure wish I, as a cyber intel analyst sometimes, had access to that information. Because boy, there's some great stuff there.
Is strategically, is that why Google are playing in the autonomous vehicle space? Like they're investing.
I don't know, I don't work at Google.
But okay, so you're smirking into your beer, Adam. Like they must have some like like logistics is clearly very important, right? And logistics of vehicles is one thing, but logistics of things like shipping and all of these other things is also very important, right? So how do they play in that world? Like Google have a huge amount of data, other companies have a huge amount of data. Like what's their role in this smart city future? And the security?
I don't want to speak about Google because I don't work for Google, but no, I mean, you know, that you can speak about them if you want to talk about them one way or another. I mean, but you mentioned machine-to-machine communications, and that is a big part of smart city. I mean, certainly the idea that you know, we can track chain of custody of goods, and we can track it moving through the city, and have a better idea of what's moving through the city and when and so on, based on integration of different technologies. Some of them have been around for a long time, some of them are emerging. It becomes particularly interesting when you start putting it on the blockchain, because as you know, as we see blockchain emerging as the fifth wave of technology, and we see the integration of logistics systems into the blockchain and integration of blockchain into this, I do see benefits relative to non-repudiation of supply chain events. Obviously, we have to solve the PKI issue that currently exists there, you know, in a post-quantum world. But having said that, you know, there are some interesting applications there.
So explain that to me, because I'm the dumb guy. The blockchain, how does that affect logistics? What's
well, you know, the idea of a non-repudiable ledger for supply chain management, and as you're moving goods through, you know, from port or from, you know, origin, manufacturer of origin to final destination, let's say in the city, the idea that you can have a non-repudiable chain of custody is very, very interesting. From the moment that something's created in a factory to the moment it's received by somebody, and you know, think of that on a much larger scale. You know, and that same registry could serve a lot of different purposes in a smart city environment. But you know, there's a lot of cryptographic principles and other problems that need to be resolved in blockchain before we can, you know, think of that, you know, that level of application deployment on top of the various systems that we have today. So.
And again, we have privacy issue.
All right, we have another question.
Yep. Hi. So,
Where are you from?
where am I from?
Yeah.
From the U.S.
Okay, good. I hope you didn't vote for Donald Trump, but apart from that, good. You did vote for Donald
He's
Trump
not
because you
answering.
didn't deny it, did you? Shame on you. Anyway, okay, carry on.
I'm taking this vacation as an opportunity to step away from the American political realm. that
Well
I'm so
done.
deeply immersed in.
Well done. Yeah, thank you for helping
So-
save the world from that
So
clown.
thank you for trying to drag me back home just there. No, so I was hoping you could maybe provide some context and insight around how much municipal groups and the people who would be purchasing to develop smart cities are aware of security issues, and how much the security of these systems enters the equation when they're selecting vendors, selecting products that they're going to bring into their environment. Is this something that gets discussed? Is there awareness from the municipal purchasing side? And I guess to wrap up, are there any I guess positive examples that you've seen that you could highlight?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was actually interested in that when someone was talking, when you guys were talking earlier. I was thinking about when you sell to the U.S. government FIPS 140, you have to make sure that your devices are compliant, and there's a whole set of things. Is there any kind of, like, the follow-on question to that? Is there any work around defining what those standards are and making sure people, you know, adhere to them, vendors adhere to them?
I don't understand what the question. Can you repeat, can you restate it?
Yeah, why don't you restate it?
Yeah, so in working with municipal groups and smart city organizations, is there awareness of security to the point where it enters the conversation when they're selecting vendors and making purchasing decisions? Is it influencing action?
No, I don't think so. Usually, because government don't understand security. I mean, the people in charge of security are not the ones taking decision or selecting the vendors. So it's basically sometimes are a lot related with politics or with approved vendors, or who is the one to purchase for because of what. You know, it depends on the country. On my country, there is a lot of corruption. So you buy the one which give you more money back to you as a politician. But in other places, it's basically they have a list of vendors and they do functionality testing. They say, okay, this works better, it's cheaper, let's buy this, and that's it. There is, I haven't seen anyone worried about security. If they worry about security, the vendor will say, yes, we are secure, and that's it. There is no way to enforce the vendor for being compliant with some security basic. I haven't seen that yet.
I think that raises another question that may be more important: is who is liable if some accident happens? I mean, if the government buys some equipment that is insecure and some attacks happens and we see a victim, a people who die, who is liable for this action? I mean, there should be some regulation that can prevent or at least identify the liable actor in this situation. And at the moment, I think there is no. So that's one of the, I have no answer about this, but that's one of the questions that when the rare times that we can speak with people that make decisions, we usually ask them, and they don't know.
Yeah, sounds like
to your question, in Dubai, for example, the Smart Dubai government actually is thinking about the underpinnings relative to security. So they understand that there's some building blocks needed to, as enablers for that. Like I mentioned, blockchain. There's an initiative to blockchain certain government services by 2020. There's initiatives around PKI and post-quantum crypto. And that's been publicly announced and so on, and there's public tenders in these areas. So you have to have these building blocks in place if you want to then build, the ecosystem that we're talking about. In the US, there are smart city councils that are starting to get groups of municipalities together to talk about how to do different aspects of smart city. And there is a security dimension in the smart city councils in the US. I know this because I was on the board of ISACA and we got involved in that. Now, how mature is that today? It's not that mature, but at least they're talking to each other, and at least there's the notion that, okay, there's all these vendors that want to participate, and there's municipalities that are not very mature in terms of their procurement process, but they want to do it. And hopefully, they'll come together and they'll get the right advisors and something good will come out the other end of it. But, as usual, the first people to the table are probably going to learn the lessons the hard way, so.
Yeah, something interesting to consider is that, for smart cities, there is government behind. So there is many things related specifically to government you don't see on companies. And also with politics. One thing is important to have in mind is that security is invisible. For politics, that doesn't add much value because you can say, okay, I will spend $100 million securing all the city infrastructure. People won't see that. They won't get more votes for the politicians. It's different than say, okay, we are spending $100 million building a new bridge, so you will get back from work to home very quickly. You will stay more time with your family. You will be happier. People say, oh, yes, that's nice. Let's vote for this guy the next round. So that's something concrete and visible, but security is invisible. So I think that until there aren't, regular attacks on cities related with the technology they use, mostly there won't be much investment on the security area. Unless there are some places like Dubai or other places that politics doesn't work that way because they are ruled in different way. But in general, when you think about politics and how invisible security is, until we don't see much attacks, things won't change, I think.
Hillary Clinton and her email server may disagree with you about politics, but yeah. Observation that I guess, and maybe just trying to summarize, it feels like all these purchasing decisions around smart cities are made by regional government. And I think, my experience of that has been central government generally has a sophisticated approach to security and regional government a non-sophisticated approach. Is that Is that an oversimplification of things? Are we basically kind of the smart city is put into a regional context and that's part of the problem or not? No response from any. Like if
approach from the government, how sophisticated.
so my experience of government has been around the world in general, and an overgeneralization is that central governments are very sophisticated around security in general, right? They're all running intelligence agencies, they're running very large pieces of data, but generally regional governments are less sophisticated, and that's just the nature of what they're doing. It sounds like the distributed nature of smart city security decisions are being made on a regional basis. Is that part of the problem? So if this thing was started to become centralized and started to become regulated, we may see an increased security or not?
I don't know that that's true, actually. I mean, you look at large cities that have a large tax base like London or New York and so on. They certainly have the muscle to do this if they want to. But I mean, to Cesar's point, doesn't give you votes, and it may or may not create jobs that are visible. So or it doesn't keep the trains on the tracks. So I think there are a lot of factors that come into these decisions, and it's also possible for a medium-sized city that is very, very well run, that has a decent tax base to do a good job with this, with the right advisory. So I don't think there's that correlation that you're stating.
Okay, good. Yeah. We got a few minutes left. We got another question. Jim.
All right. Hi. It's not really questions because my question's already answered. But what I'm trying to do is make a suggestion, because I'm coming from the third world country where the first world is always our role model. So what you guys doing in Germany, in USA, UK is like we are looking out. So what we're looking right now is a good model that we can implement, copy, or whatever, like choosing the right vendor, whether like security tested, we can do to have everything properly and stuff like that. And I don't know, probably it's like Mark, you personally done great with OAuth back in the days, and probably you can do the same thing with the smart city and making some new standard now, how the security testing for the smart city solution and stuff like that. I don't know, 80, Cesar?
What do you mean about?
Well, so I think Jim's question. I think what Jim is saying is someone going to take the charge and expose or champion what the problem is and figure out how to create standards around this? So who's leading that charge, and who should you attach to?
We are doing some effort with Securing Smart Cities initiative, where after identifying all these issues and all the problems, I thought, okay, I should do something about this, not only complaining and pointing out the problems. Sure. I try to find solutions and offer something. So I talked to people, friends and companies, and there was a lot of interested people, and we started to work on that. So we have created guidelines, we are publishing papers, because something to know about is that there aren't much resources related specifically to cybersecurity in smart cities. There isn't. You can find cybersecurity about any topic, but for smart cities, very reduced amount of information. Totally. So one thing we are doing is creating that information, making easy to understand for general public, not only for technical people, only for decision makers, for government people that can take, a 5-page paper and understand the problem and trying to do something about that. Oh, excellent. We are a few people. We are trying to do something. We haven't done much, but we are working on that.
And Cesar, where would people go to find out that information?
Yeah. securesmartcities.org, and there are a lot of useful papers there. And we have companies and researchers collaborating, and once in a while we release a paper, some research that is very interesting, because, like I said, we try to focus on practical and simple things that can be understood by anyone.
I don't know if I can say that, but we are also working on a training right now. There is a project inside the initiative for training like high-level people on these issues. I mean, the training will be divided, but there is also a part for high-level people to understand better the issue. And actually, the initiative last year in DEF CON we also got some response from government people that were present, some people from the government that like asked question and try to stay, I don't know if they try to stay in contact later, but at least they participate during the talk of last year.
Yeah, right. Also having this panel, helps to share ideas, and to bring the problems to the table and trying to find solutions. I mean, we are at early stage, but we should start doing something right now, because when in a few years, when there will be really smart cities, a lot of technology being deployed, everything integrated, any cyber attack, if the technology is not secure, there will be a huge impact on how we live and how it will affect our lives.
Great. So we are at the end. Any other burning questions from the audience? I don't see anyone. We're not going to pick. Oh, we have one more here. Great. Where are you from and what's your question?
I'm from Singapore.
Excellent.
My name is Liang.
You didn't vote for Donald Trump.
I didn't. I was
Well
disappointed.
done. Well done,
as
you.
disappointed as you.
Yes.
Anyway, we're not going to turn this into a Trump festival.
Yeah. Good.
So I'm just curious. Smart nation, smart city. It all talks about government. I see 4 guys up there, not from government. So maybe we are missing an important element in the discussion.
Sorry to interrupt. We asked
Yes.
about having government people from Singapore, and I don't know what was the reaction. I think Dylan will know, but we asked a couple of months ago to participate in this roundtable to Singapore government.
Yeah, usually people from government don't want to talk on the record.
Well, I think I heard you just now that you said that they probably don't know much. That's why they don't have much to say. But they have the power to put on regulations, to enforce, to put in money, all this. So maybe I'm just wondering, what is the top 3 things on your list that you want the government to do?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I certainly didn't say that government people don't know much. The government people I work with know a lot, number one. And I've had 20 plus years involved with the government, and my current job involves a lot of government people. So, I've worked for a long, long time as a government contractor. So I think the way I would think about it is that, while, and I know my colleagues have as well, while certainly we're not government executives, having worked so closely with the government for so many years of my career, I certainly have a perspective on the way the government thinks. Now, having a government rep up here to tell you what regulations they're thinking about and how they view procurements and how they view the vendor landscape, I agree is a lot different perspective than hearing vendors speak about it. But I'll tell you that, my life is daily interaction with city officials, federal officials, and so on, listening to them talk about their vision, listening to them talk about how they view this space, the things that keep them up at night, the dreams they have about making, people's lives better. So, I don't think you're getting a skewed perspective, because we're not here selling you anything as much as trying to tell you that we're reflecting the viewpoints of the people that we talk to in our daily lives, So it's not that far off. You're going to hear a different version if we were the actual government people.
Yes, I work with government too, and I know that they actually know quite a lot of stuff. It's just that a lot of it is classified. So
Yeah, I agree with you. So.
Yeah. But,
So maybe that's a great way to kind of end, actually. So the question was 3 things, but we're not going to get 3 things from everyone. But if you get one wish that you could ask every government around the world, whether it's testing, regulation, driving standards into vendors, whatever that thing is, you each get one wish. What is it? And we'll start with you at the end, Eddie, and we'll work backwards.
I think that my one wish would be, what I'm seeing a lot of in Dubai, I see that across a lot of municipalities, which would be to think about the plumbing first. A lot of times, and this is not a bad thing. It's just what's happened, and it's fine. But, we rush to all the cool stuff first, and then it's like, oh, you security guys come in, you security men and women come in and fix all this stuff for us. And, I think what we're seeing with a lot of this is a healthy fear of what could happen if it's not done right. And a lot of it involves good plumbing. And, so I'd like to see the plumbing done right. That would be my wish.
Okay, great. Cesar.
For me, I think the fair thing to do is education, because people need to understand. They need to know first what is security about, what is important to have security, because if they don't know about it, they won't do anything. So I think education is the main thing. People should be educated. Officials at the government at different level, from technical to high level people, they need to understand that now we depend a lot on technology and we need to protect it. Because if we don't protect it, then we won't be able to have a regular life like we have today. And this technology dependence keep growing every day. So every day security, protecting this technology becomes also more important. So they need to learn that, they need to understand that. And from there, I think they will understand that they have to do something about it.
Okay, great. So plumbing, education and awareness.
Yeah, I think
Matteo.
we can summarize all of this with the interaction and involvement with the security community and security researcher. I think that's the ultimate answer, to let them understand the problem and try to anticipate bad things.
Great. So fantastic. It sounds like your resource is a brilliant resource for people to start with. So can you just repeat that? Because I know this is being streamed. So what's the URL of that?
Securingsmartcities.org. There is a lot of securingsmartcities.org. There is a lot of information there, papers, guidelines, and there is an email there you can use to contact us. If you want to join and collaborate, you're welcome.
Great.
We may put the link in the YouTube video description.
Yep.
Something possible.
Down there, I think is what you say with YouTube, right? Down there if you need to comment. Great. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. It was a great inauguration for the pub, right? Great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.